morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, online viewers, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM and other radio stations. I'm Rolika Roach and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. At this time, I invite the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Wycliffe Smith, to address you. Minister Smith.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roach, and good morning to all. Gathered here, Madam Prime Minister, honorable colleague ministers, the Department of Communications, members of the press, as well as the listening and viewing audiences via radio, television, and social media. Good morning, Sualiga. Tomorrow, Thursday, January 24th, will be celebrated as the International Day of Education for the first time. International Day of Education is meant to celebrate the role of education in development. This could be in the development of an individual, the development of a community, or in the development of a country. The International Day of Education is part of the United Nations 2030 Agenda and particularly Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is focused on ensuring that quality education is accessible to all. Regardless of gender, race, socioeconomic status, age, or any other factor, education is a universal right for all people. Here on St. Martin, I encourage each person to strive to continue your education. Once there's life, it is never too late to learn something new. Teachers and students at the Ruby La Vega Primary School are more relieved after repairs were made to classrooms that had damaged roofs. On Monday, I visited the school during a shower of rain to attest to the teachers' satisfaction with the progress. Temporary repairs were executed in the past, but due to weather and other unforeseen circumstances, these repairs had to be addressed again. The alert was raised to my cabinet by the Y2 President, Mrs. Claire Elshot. Following Hurricane Irma, public school buildings underwent phase 1 of the reconstruction plan, where quick fixes were done to get schools to an operational level. In phase 2, subsidized schools received funding for their repairs while the bidding process began for public schools. Large expenditure of public funds must undergo a process of public bidding, after which repairs and reconstruction can begin. Public school buildings are being prepared for the general reconstruction phase according to the governing program 2018-2022, where buildings will be made hurricane resilient. Discussions are also ongoing for funding from the World Bank. In last week's press briefing, a question was posed concerning the Prince Willem Alexander School. So here's the most recent update. In regards to the reconstruction of the new Prince Willem Alexander School, this project was already in process before the 2017 hurricane season. Due to budget constraints, the entire project for the construction of the new Prince Willem Alexander School was divided into 6 phases. Phase 1 entailed the construction of 8 classrooms with the installation of solar panels. This phase actually began in January 2017 with 1, asbestos removal, initially due to the presence of asbestos within certain elements of the school. This had to be removed by a third-party company before any demolition or construction could take place. 2, demolition of the existing structure and filling of existing septic seepage pit. And 3, construction of 8 classrooms and a small play area. The construction of the 8 classrooms was expected to be completed by the 3rd quarter of 2017. However, the project encountered several delays such as high groundwater level, unforeseen issues on site, and the passing of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. The latter caused the project to be greatly delayed due to damage caused on site and lack of availability of personnel. The project was officially restarted yesterday with an expected delivery date for Phase 1 by July 2019. Last week, I participated via video conferencing in a meeting with my colleague ministers of education from Aruba and Curaçao. The meeting was in preparation for the Vierlanden Overleg, or the 4-country consultation on education, with colleague ministers from the 4 countries in the kingdom. Some of the matters to be discussed at the Vierlanden Overleg are the quality of education, vocational education and its relevancy to the labor market, higher education and its fit in other forms of higher education in the Caribbean, the region, and in the Netherlands, teacher education, and the language policy. The Vierlanden Overleg will be held on Curaçao on February 7th and 9th, with all 4 countries of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in attendance. A delegation from St. Martin will travel to Curaçao for that meeting. I received an update from the board of the St. Martin Academy on the progress of the construction efforts as these relate to the St. Martin Academy's academic campus. The contractor defaulted on the agreed completion deadline of December 15th, 2018, and there are some pending issues regarding additional work to be carried out. Repairs to 2 other sections of the campus with hurricane damages have not yet been carried out. This is partly due to budgetary constraints. Based on the work pending and the financial forecast, it is expected that the board will be able to reopen the academic campus for the start of the school year 2019-2020. Lastly, I'd like to address the topic on protecting our children. Recently, my Cabinet Chief of Staff, Peter J. Giddens, brought to my attention that there is an outpouring of #MeToo reports of child abuse, molestation, and pedophilia on social media from members of our community. These activities are reprehensible and must be taken seriously. Just 2 months ago, as the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, I signed the Memorandum of Understanding on behalf of St. Martin to declare our commitment as a country to promoting, protecting, and defending the International Convention of the Rights of the Child. It is every child's right to be free and safe from harm of any form. No girl or boy should have to endure the advances of sexual predators in their home, in school, or in the community. You've heard me say before, it takes a village to raise a child, and I reiterate it now, because as a community, we must do something about this social cancer. There are persons who question the children's role in the abusive relationships, but there's only one way to answer that. It is the adult's duty and responsibility to protect the child from harm, even from bringing harm to him or herself. Adults, let us do the right thing. As the ministry with responsibility for youth, we have been offering continuous support to hurting children and families through the Student Support Services Division, the SSSD. And we have also been promoting the international rights of the child through the Department of Youth Affairs. In addition, the Youth Desk was established a few years ago with the mission to facilitate our young people in handling matters and receiving information that pertain to them. These include, for example, laws and policies geared towards our youth. In working with the Department of Youth Affairs, I will commit to reopening the Youth Desk. This will be another avenue for young persons to reach out for help with abusive situations. I'm calling on the House of Parliament to review the Penal Code concerning crimes committed against our children. The gravity of the damage that these pedophiles inflict on our victims should be reflected in the consequences meted out through our laws and in our judicial system. I also will be working with the Minister of Justice to provide support needed to the police force, particularly the departments responsible for investigating crimes against juveniles and the youth and the court of guardianship, as they are critical to bringing social relief, care, and justice to the abused children and their families. I'm asking that all caring, well-meaning adults, parents, teachers, counselors, social workers, and trustworthy neighbors to listen to our children when they report that some wrong has befallen them. Pay attention to signs that the child does not feel safe around a particular person. You may be the one to rescue that child from a traumatic situation. Listen to their outcry and report it to the authorities. I'm encouraging all children who have had the unfortunate experience of being touched in inappropriate ways or told to keep secrets about what has been done or asked of them concerning their private body parts, to tell it to their parent or family member, to a teacher or a school counselor, to a trusted adult, or to the police. Whether it was done by an adult or another child, no one is allowed to hurt our boys and our girls. It is time for us to take a stand, St. Martin. We must protect our young ones. Allow righteous salt to clean this wound that has been festering in our society for too long. Let us unite and focus on doing the right thing for our children and for our future. Thank you for watching and for listening, and I'll be available for any questions that you may have. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Minister Smith, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor, the Honorable Emma Lee, to address you. Minister Lee?
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleague ministers, members of the media, those listening by radio, television, or internet. I have two topics that I'd like to update you on. Number one is a report on our first meeting of the task force that's been assembled to review the 2019 AOV-AWW indexation. This task force, as I mentioned last week, would be assembled to review the indexation. We met already this past Monday. And as I've mentioned before, the concern surrounding the lack of indexation definitely has the attention of the ministry and myself. I understand that in these times, it may feel like concerns of the most vulnerable groups in our community may go unheard by government, but I assure you this is certainly not the case. And I would like to take this moment to recognize platforms such as the St. Martin Anti-Poverty Platform and the St. Martin Consumers Coalition that continue to advocate on behalf of these groups, and in our case, our pensioners. The task force met, as I mentioned, this past Monday. Representatives included myself as minister, members of the cabinet of the minister, the Secretary General of VSA, as well as the Department of Social Development, the Department of Stats from the Ministry of TIAT, as well as someone from Judicial Affairs and Legislation to provide legislative assistance and guidance. The objective of the task force is to review the indexation process from all angles, from a social, legal, and execution perspective, and to ensure that a workable solution that complies with all of the laws would be put in place. The meeting was productive, and I believe certainly a step in the right direction. We first collectively reviewed what the situation was and how we arrived at where we are today. This being unable to index the AOV, AWW amounts due to the fact that there were no 2018 Consumer Price Index numbers, because none were and will be published, as TIAT confirmed in an earlier press release this week. Just to give a little bit of a technical explanation as to what happened, and that this isn't an incident where government just didn't do what it had to do. There's a real technical explanation for this. The Consumer Price Index, especially for the AOV and AWW, is calculated from the months of August to August. So in order to calculate this, we would need numbers per month. So the Consumer Price Index is calculated on a monthly basis and then averaged over the period of a year from August to August. Again, and this is based on legislation. But based on changes to the basket of goods, so in other words, the Stats Department uses a basket of items that they go out on a monthly basis, and they measure the prices of these to see what inflation has done to the prices of those goods. Based on that, they make a calculation in terms of what happens, how you calculate the Consumer Price Index. That basket of goods changed as of January 1. So in order to update that basket to make it more relevant to our community, that basket of goods was changed. In addition to that, there were technical changes, meaning that the software program that was used to calculate the Consumer Price Index also changed. So not only the basket of goods, but also the methodology in terms of how it was calculated. And so this left really the Stats Department with a technical issue in terms of how would they produce a reliable and valid Consumer Price Index number. And so that's something that the task force is working on. And while I think we all certainly recognize that there's a need to index these numbers, we also, unfortunately or fortunately, we are bound by legislation. Some of our legislation needs to change. We all know that, and throughout all of the ministries, I think we bump up against legislation that's just out of date and in need of revision. But that's a whole process in itself. So I understand that the platforms have made their own suggestions and recommendations as to what this index number should be, but of utmost importance is that we need to review this matter and make sure, as I've mentioned, that it's done according to legislation, and that all short and long-term implications for all parties are also taken into account. As I've mentioned, it was a productive meeting, and I'm pleased to see that all parties have come together with a proactive approach. I think certainly all the people around the table, the interest is to find a solution, and I'm very proud of the group that's been put together. They're all working not to find obstacles to a solution, but how do we solve the problem. I'd like to make it clear at this time, no definitive decision has been made as of yet. We are working diligently. I hope to have something on the short term. The task force is going to meet again. We already have our homework from our first meeting, and we should regroup, if not by the end of the week, by early next week. We've also scheduled a meeting with the platform representatives later today just to update them on the progress that we've made. Should the outcome be that indexation of the amounts would take place for 2019, the idea is that it would be done retroactively as per January 1st. Again, I remain positive in terms of the expected outcome. The second topic I'd like to touch on is our Emergency Income Skills Training Program. As you know, this is a program that was developed immediately after Irma and initially funded by government. And then with World Bank coming in, this is a program, one of the programs that World Bank is funding. And I think very proudly, this is one of the programs that's running well. And I think it also is a program that initiated relatively quickly based on the fact that a lot of legwork was already done by the ministry leading up to it. Last year, we announced the availability of space for free hospitality training courses as part of this program. Students who successfully complete the courses are awarded an internationally accredited certificate. In other words, the training that the people go through and the certification that they receive is a certification that's recognized worldwide. I think that speaks to the quality of the educational courses that we're offering, that we've chosen to use international standards and not just some sort of hodgepodge of courses. We've definitely looked at the sustainability of the program and how it can continue beyond this emergency phase. The Emergency Income Skills Training Program is a project of VSA that was initiated to assist vulnerable groups. And by vulnerable groups, what we're really specifically targeting are those that are unemployed, obviously, as well as those that are underemployed. So there are those in the community, because of damage to their places of work, their employers have reduced their work schedule. So for those who have a reduced work schedule, they can also participate in the course. The idea is to improve their skill set towards becoming a more employable in various sectors and to provide financial support to those who are unemployed and underemployed. The qualified participants received not only a stipend, but also their health insurance. And we've started to see already that participants in the course are actually graduating and moving on from the course. So they are returning to full-time employment, which I think is, again, a very positive story. So we've come with an interim program that has helped to give them some income that they can bridge the gap between what's happened from Irma to the time that their employment has an opportunity to recover, that they can return to full employment. And the feedback from the employers has been extremely positive, that they see the results of the training program in terms of the productivity and the skill sets of the workers returning. I'm happy to announce that on Monday, February 18th, there will be a new course starting, so another entry point for people to participate. Several new students will start their course and their journey to obtain this internationally recognized certification. And this is an opportunity for those in the community that are underemployed or unemployed that want to improve their skill sets and also receive a stipend. So yes, you actually receive money to go to school to learn a set of skills that makes you more employable. In addition, you'll get health insurance with the program as well. That's all part of the program we've put together with World Bank. Sorry. This program is managed by the St. Martin Training Foundation. The courses the students are enrolled in are the Hospitality 360 and a Culinary Arts program. The Hospitality 360 course is designed to enhance their knowledge, skills, and attitude in hospitality operations in accordance with international industry standards. The course is unique for St. Martin and offers a complete set of skill sets for the development of the students. It covers core competencies like cleaning bar areas, operating a bar, preparing and mixing cocktails, providing links between kitchen and service areas, providing room service, providing food and beverage service, developing and updating the food and beverage knowledge, and providing wine services as well. The Hospitality 360 course is followed up with specific departmental courses which students can specialize in, such as front office, housekeeping, bartending, and restaurant. The Culinary Arts course is designed to enhance the knowledge, skills, and attitudes of those working in cooking hot, cold sauces, dressings, and desserts. It also includes competencies in workplace communications, teamwork, personal hygiene, safety in the use of hand tools and equipment, and good housekeeping. Thanks. Thanks, Pam. I have a bit of a cold still, so. Thank you. So persons who are in our community who are underemployed or unemployed, I urge you to take the initiative to contact the Department of Labor Affairs. You need to bring a valid ID with you. As I mentioned again, the course is looking at starting on February 18th. So be proactive, improve your skill set, come into the Department of Labor and register for and apply for the course, which is scheduled to start mid-February. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Minister Lee, for your opening remarks. The Prime Minister, the Honorable Leona Romeo Marlin, and the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Perry Herlings, are present at this morning's press briefing but will not be making any opening statements. They are both, however, available to answer any questions the media may have. We now move on to the question and answer session. Lyndon Brown of BCN TV, you have the floor.
Good morning to the people of St. Martin and to the ministers that are present here today. Question to Minister Lee. Minister Lee, recently you said you will be heading for Italy to obtain a letter of guarantee. Of course, for the past months, there was a lot of controversy over that matter. Can you make it clear to the people of St. Martin what become of that letter of guarantee?
Well, first of all, we issued a press release earlier this week. Actually, the SMMC issued the press release updating the public on the trip to Italy, but I'm happy to recount that for you. There was a delegation that went to Italy that was myself, Henk de Zeeuw, who's the project manager, as well as Kees Clarenbeek, who's the director for the hospital, and Robert Jan James, who's the chairman of the board. The idea was not to receive a letter of guarantee. I don't know where that statement comes from. The idea was to understand exactly what the impact of this emergency extraordinary administrative procedure on the parent company of INSO is. That's the company Candote. So we met with representatives from INSO. So that's the new director, the general manager, that was hired by the 3 commissioners. So INSO, as well as Candote actually, their management structure has been changed with this extraordinary administrative procedure. So all of their top management is now in the hands of the Italian government. So the Italian government appointed these 3 commissioners. Sorry. These 3 commissioners are running the company, and they've hired a new general manager. We met with them, and the idea was to understand better what was the status of the procedure, what the implications of it were, and to understand from them what level of comfort we should see as the hospital project in terms of continuity for the project, financial securities, and I would say that the meetings were very positive. We've received confirmation in terms of our discussions, and we expect to continue those discussions as well in collaboration with stakeholders and especially with the lenders for the hospital project.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Andrew Dick of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Good morning to all the council, all the ministers here present. Prime Minister, concerning the motion that was presented by the opposition in Parliament while you were there, would like to get your take as Prime Minister on the motion being presented against one of your ministers.
Thank you for that question. My take, I have no comment specifically on that motion. It hasn't been passed, so when that time comes, then we can probably have a discussion on it, but I don't think it's my place to speak about a motion that was brought against one of my ministers at this current time.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Andrew Bishop of St. Martin News Online, you have the floor.
Ministers, good morning. Prime Minister, one question for you. Does the board of the Princess Juliana Airport has the authority to seek alternative financing for the project?
Thank you for that question. Indeed, the board of the airport have the authority to seek financing because they've done that in the past, so it speaks for itself. They can.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We now move on to the second round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
Morning again. Question to the Prime Minister regarding the airports. For the past days, there was some controversy over the airport. There was some accusation that you are selling out. And also, the funding that you actually got for the workers, according to your statement, that if that funding was not available, some workers will be out of jobs, and it will be difficult for families. That was something positive, but could you share your take on the matter? Of course, you might have heard the matter from the newspaper and radio. Just share your your comment on that matter, please, for us?
I'm going to first address your statement. You need to clarify what accusations, because I don't think I made any accusations. I think on the floor of Parliament, I presented basically the situation at the airport, and that at the end of January, they won't be able to make their payrolls, and government is doing everything possible to assist them to ensure that we don't have workers that are on the street and don't have a job. But I didn't make any accusations, so, but you need to.
A member of Parliament accusing you of selling out, so that's what I mentioned.
A member of Parliament
Yeah,
accusing me of?
Of selling out, and there was disagreement with the funds, like
You know, Mr. Lyndon Brown, we will, you know, you can't agree with everything, and everyone will have a difference of an opinion, but at the end of the day, this government took action to try to remedy a situation, because at the end of the day, if nothing is done, those same airport workers will be right here at the government footsteps looking for some form of assistance.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Andrew Dick, you have the floor.
Yes, Minister Lee, concerning the indexation, as far as the Minister of Labor, you've been the minister for quite some time now with different governments. Do you believe that the indexing should take place? Yeah.
Sorry, I do. You know, I think clearly there has been some increase in the consumer pricing. So the idea is that the AOV should be indexed to, so that you can, you know, maintain a standard of living. And I think that's a basic principle. So it really is a technical issue. So unfortunately, like I mentioned, and as by the press release from TIAT, unfortunately, I didn't have any technical ability to do that. And so we are reviewing to see, you know, how can we adjust that. So yes, in principle, I believe that we should.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Andrew Bishop, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Minister Lee, are there any price control officers out there? Because the prices in the supermarkets are sometimes very difficult for people to manage. Because in one supermarket is one price, and in another supermarket is another price. Is there anything being done about that?
Andrew, thank you. The Ministry of VSR does not control prices. That's a function of the Ministry of TIAT. So our responsibility is to control from a health perspective. And since you asked the question, it might be interesting to also comment. For example, earlier this week, there was a video going around on WhatsApp with some supposed restaurant with rats. And I immediately contacted the inspector, and the inspector actually explained that this is a video that's been circulating for a year, and it has nothing to do with any restaurant in St. Martin. So I caution people, because you see it a lot, especially on social media, where people take one thing, they take it out of context, and they heard from somebody who heard from somebody, and next thing you know, it's going viral all over the place. So, you know, I do think that the inspectorate does a very good job in terms of going out and controlling from a health perspective. From the price perspective, that's something that's under TIAT, but I mean, I guess I could comment that there are obviously things that are price controlled, that's set, you see them advertised in the newspaper. The other items are regulated by market forces, by competition.
Thank you, Minister Lee. We now move on to the third round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
Question to Minister Smith. Minister Smith, you mentioned just now, education is an international convention. Let me emphasize, education for all. It's an international convention. Minister Smith, I have encountered children and parents who are fighting for the children to attend school here in St. Martin. But the problem, they don't have legal documents. How do you, as Minister of Education, deal with this matter?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Brown. We have a law called compulsory education, which it is for all children. It means that all children on this island, legal or not, once they are between the ages of 4 and 18, are required to be in school. And so that's what we do. Our government schools particularly are open and do their utmost to ensure placement of any child that applies to any of the government schools.
On the same topic, I have encountered.
Thank you, Minister Smith. We now
And
move
it's on the same
on
topic.
to the next question. You can ask it in the next round. Andrew Dick, you have the floor.
Minister Hearings, concerning the budget 2019, can we get an update? How soon will it get to the Parliament? I know last thing you said it was at the Advisory Council. No? Okay, can we get an update on the budget then?
Thank you, Mr. Dick. Good morning to all. No, I didn't mention that it was at the council. What I did mention in my last press briefing is that there is a budget 2019 submitted and at the Parliament right now. The handling of that budget is on hold because at the 11th hour an additional advice from the CFT, the Council for Financial Supervision, to the Kingdom Council of Ministers was rendered, and there was a difference of view on our total amount of expenses. Our expenses were at 503 million for the year 2019, and the advice was of the opinion that it should have been 475 million. Now, the unique thing that happened afterwards is that my ministry continued the talks with the CFT and the Ministry of Interior Affairs and Kingdom Relations in the Netherlands to see where we can find a consensus. Those talks are in the final phase right now. But the Kingdom Council of Ministers nevertheless approved the budget with the advice or with the recommendation to go and sit and talk and work things out, and that's what we are doing right now. We hope that by mid-February, third week of February, that's actually the date that we kind of agreed upon, that the budget, the amended budget or the adjusted budget will be in Parliament for further handling. So that is the status right now. In the meantime, and before that, yes, it have to go to the Council of Advice, the Governor, our Legal Affairs Department, so the whole protocol still have to be applied to what we have agreed upon, but it's going very well, the talks. I can inform you of that, Mr. Dick. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Minister Hearings. Andrew Bishop, you have the floor.
Question for Minister Lee. The stipend that the persons are receiving to do the training, about how much money they are paid?
If I recall, it varies a little bit. If I recall, it was about 1,000 guilders a month, but it does vary a little bit. There's different levels of training.
Thank you, Minister Lee. We now move on to the fourth round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
Good morning again. Question to Minister of Finance. For some reason, you have been monitored your trip to Suriname, and I saw the video, and the emphasis, what was forecast, that you do not agree with the process, the slow process. That's one of the accusations of the Dutch from the 550 million. Do you care to respond on your visit? If it was a government visit to Suriname, it was for family, but the video have been surfaced here in St. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Maybe I should rephrase the question a little bit for you. I understood that there are comments made in society that I'm against the World Bank and that I have said something in that matter during that interview. I think that was taken out of context. Everybody that followed me a little bit since I'm in politics and I also was in Parliament, I was one of the first ones that actually said that in the first year of the recovery of St. Martin, it would be good to have direct cooperation and collaboration with our Dutch counterparts, because I believe that that would work much faster. And then after that year, or maybe later in the year, you put the World Bank, because the World Bank is a huge institution which has, you know, all kind of protocols that might hamper the speed of the process. That's all I said, and it's taken out of context like I'm against the World Bank. Well, let me burst that bubble. We are working quite fine with the World Bank. We have a lot of programs that are being financed or have been financed in the meantime. It is an agreement that was made, and we are dealing with the agreement. And nothing is perfect in this life. If the World Bank, their procurement and their protocols takes a little time, I think the Prime Minister and all other ministers involved with certain projects explain that in length to the public, explain that in length also to the members of Parliament. You know, at a certain point, I think you should just move on and get your job done. We can go back and forth on what is the position of the minister. This is how it is, and we are dealing with it. And again, to emphasize, we have a good relationship with the World Bank, and things are working quite fine right now. I'm very optimistic, as I say many occasions already. So it was taken out of context, and people can do whatever they want with whatever I say. But if you ask me the question, I will explain you, and that's the way I think it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heerlings. Andrew Dick.
Minister Heerlings, as far as the 2019 road tax, as far as the plates, I know that last week Minister De Wever said that some stickers were coming. Can you give us an update on that also?
Thank you for that question also, Mr. Dick. I can give you an update because there was another question from Mr. Cerelian who wanted to know how many plates, and I can give that information also. In total, we have 67,556 plates up for sale. I have a whole breakdown also per plate, and the expected income out of those plates is approximately 9 million guilders. To date, we have sold 14.8% of that amount. That is the equivalent of 1.26 million guilders. But again, there are differences in prices per plate, so that you have to take that into consideration. And yes, to deal with small controversy in society on the plates, the carnival plates, so to speak, the Council of Ministers decided to find consensus and render also the possibility to purchase a sticker just for this year. We are working on that sticker right now. The latest information that I got from colleague minister and the printer is that if everything goes well, the sticker should be here by the end of next week or early the week after. Again, for our clarity, the stickers will be available for those who are not interested in having the regular number plate, but anybody can have both the number plate and the sticker. So the ones with the new plate just put a plate on, and without the plate you put your sticker behind the windshield, and you carry the old number plate with you as for the control and the checkup. That is the status at this point in time. There are no additional charges also to the stickers.
Thank you, Minister Heerlings. Andrew Bishop.
Thank you. Minister, that is a vast change from what we are accustomed to, having either having a plate or a sticker. But I think it's a good thing so that people could have choices. How much does you said the plates cost, you didn't mention the cost of the plates, each plate.
The amount or the cost of the plate are similar to last year. As a matter of fact, today again in the newspaper there was a list published on the cost of each plate. So I would like to refer you to the newspaper of today.
Thank you, Minister Heerlings. We now move on to the final round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
Final question to the Prime Minister. Of course, you have mentioned that there are some areas that from the 550 million, there are going to be some visible activity. I have seen some activity started at the police station. Could you let us into the different areas that the people of St. Martin might not be aware of?
Thank you. We have indeed the police station is being repaired as we speak. We have the St. Martin Housing Development Foundation. They will be repairing all of the houses that have been damaged for Hurricane Irma. Within short, we will be continuing our roof repair program. So indeed, there will be some visible stuff. The Minister Lee just talked about the renewing of the program at NEPA. So the schools will start within short because they also have to be repaired. So indeed, you will see a lot more happening in 2019 if everything goes as planned. So I will leave that as that.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Andrew Dick.
Minister Smith, concerning the upcoming Carnival season, you said that before culture, you would want to see more culture in our Carnival. Any update as far as that?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Dick. I think in our last press briefing, I mentioned that this is an aspect that has the attention of the Department of Education or the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, and the Department of Culture is busy developing a program that would highlight the cultural aspects of St. Martin during the Carnival season. Discussions have taken place with the Minister of TIAT also about this, and also with the Carnival Foundation. And within short, the ministry will be presenting a plan that would involve our kids, would involve our schools, would involve cultural foundations, and we're looking at perhaps one day that would be dedicated to the cultural aspect of St. Martin.
Thank you, Minister Smith. Andrew Bishop, you have the final question.
Prime Minister, we understand that the airport will be getting 1 million guilders, 100 million guilders, dollars or euros, whatever it is. No. Is that amount of money sufficient to repair the airport and have working capital for the next 2 years?
Thank you for that question. I want to reemphasize that 100 million is something that was discussed with the airport, and based on the World Bank assessment, that is the amount for the restoration of that facility. And yes, the 100 million, not 1 million, but $100 million.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the Live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. For rebroadcast, tune in every evening at 7 p.m. on St. Martin Cable TV. For video on demand, log on to the official government's website at www.stmartingov.org. On behalf of the Department of Communication, I am Roulaika Roach, and do have a pleasant day further.